Hi, I'm Mark Harrison, and you may know me from my various music instruction books or my work here in Los Angeles at the Grove School of Music. In this lesson, I'd like to talk a little bit about the harmonic usage of modes or modal scales. And I'm going to be referencing some concepts from some different books I have actually. In our Contemporary Music Theory Level 1 book, I have a basic breakdown of modes and how they're derived from major scales. Also in our Contemporary Ear Training Level 2 book, I have a number of ear training exercises on modes, how to recognize them, and also sight singing exercises as well on modes using our solfege system. Okay, you might have seen our ear training and music theory series perhaps in your local music store or even in your local library. Okay, so let's get started with some basic theory concepts about modes. You can regard modes simply as displacements of a major scale. For instance, if I take C major, which of course are these notes, that's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, C major scale. If I displace that to start at different places, we create different modal relationships as follows. If I start that scale on D, I create a D Dorian mode. Dorian literally means some major scale starting on its second degree, and D is the tonic of that scale. So D Dorian has a C major scale hiding within it. We often refer to the term relative major. We could say that C major was the relative major of D Dorian because it's the major scale that's been displaced to create D Dorian. Similarly, if I start or displace the C major scale started on E, I create E Phrygian. And so on up the series, we have F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and B Locrian. Okay. These modes are all used to a greater or lesser degree in the contemporary styles. Okay. In pop and rock and R&B styles, we hear a lot of Aeolian modes, and to a lesser degree Lydian and Dorian modes. In the jazz world, Dorian modes are very popular, as well as the more chromatic or edgy modes like Phrygian and Locrian. More of these modal characteristics in a moment. Okay, so that's the basic theory of it, how we can displace a major scale to create modes. Don't forget that modes are not disassociated concepts, so always try and relate them to the major scale they came from. That way they'll be more accessible and easier to derive for you. Okay, so back to the D Dorian for a second. Here's C major, displaced to become D Dorian. Okay, so that's straightforward enough. But now, let's say I were to play the note D in the bass, okay, and still play that D Dorian scale in my right hand. Okay, that of course is still D Dorian. But if I were to play these notes in my right hand in any particular order and sequence or in any combination, that is to say, not just in this ascending sequence, but in some either kind of more improvised sequence like this, over the D in the bass, okay, what I've done there, I'm just essentially improvising or noodling in a D Dorian, aka C major scale restriction, but over the note D in the bass here. What I've essentially created is a D Dorian harmonic environment. Okay, so I can play any notes in any combination I want in within a C major scale restriction. As long as I have D on the bottom, I've created a D Dorian harmonic environment overall. And that's a fairly powerful tool for composers, arrangers, and improvisers. Similarly, if I took the notes in E Phrygian, if I put E in the bass, that again defines E Phrygian. But again, I could play these notes in any combination, and simply with the E in the bass there, regardless of the sequence or combination of notes, provided I stayed within the E Phrygian, that is to say C major scale restriction in my right hand, again the E in the left hand does define an E Phrygian harmonic environment. Okay, so as we go through these different harmonic modes, different characteristics kind of present themselves. There are certain color tones that composers and arrangers and players will make very good optimal use of. For example, back to that Dorian mode for a second. Of all the notes in that mode, the 6th degree is considered a color tone in Dorian. So if I'm improvising in D Dorian, I will make good use of that 6. Similarly in E Phrygian, or on a similar note, but thinking about a color tone in E Phrygian, one thing to remember about Phrygian is that it does start with a half step, E up to F. So Phrygian, with respect to the bass note there of E, does have that half step dissonance possibility. So more impressionistic arrangers and jazz arrangers will make a good use of that to get some dissonance and tension. So that half step is commonly used in Phrygian. Okay, now in Lydian, F Lydian, again, the 4th degree of F Lydian is B natural. Again, don't forget, I'm just sticking within a C major scale essentially in my right hand, but the C major scale has all these modal displacements available. Okay, a B natural with respect to F Lydian is a raised fourth with respect to this tonic of F, and as such is considered to have a very bright and leading sound, and that attracts attention. So the B in an F Lydian mode is again considered a nice color tone, and so on and so forth. Each of these modes can be considered from the point of view of their own kind of tension and color tones. All right. So that's an example of taking, just to recap very briefly, we took a C major scale and then we displaced it to create different modes. Then I took each of those bass notes, D, E, F, G, etc., and sort of improvised over the top of them, all the while staying within the C major scale restriction, creating different modal harmonic environments. Okay, now let's take a little bit of a different tack. In the Ear Training Level 2 book, which I mentioned earlier, we go through a process where we take the starting note of C, and then we see what other modes pass through that note of C. Okay, what that will do is give rise to different relative major scales. That is to say, scales from which the modes originate. So let's see how that process might work. Let's start with a basic C major scale. Okay, now I could also check out some other modes which pass through the note C. For example, C Mixolydian, which is actually a displaced F major scale. Also C Dorian, which is a displaced B flat major scale, and so on and so forth. There's quite a number of different modes that pass through the note C. Another one will be C Lydian, okay, which is a G major scale. Okay. So let's focus on a couple of those modes for a moment, and I'll again try and extend them, giving you a bit of a harmonic environment or context. Okay, so let's focus on, for example, C Dorian, which is really a B flat major scale displaced. C is the 2nd degree of a B flat major scale. A Dorian mode means some major scale starting on its 2nd degree, right? And then another mode I mentioned was C Lydian. That's a G major scale displaced. Lydian means some major scale starting from its 4th degree. So C Lydian is aka a G major scale, simply displaced to start on C. So if I had just C on the bass down here, if I was improvising, if I moved between a B flat major scale note restriction and then a G major scale note restriction, alternately, all over C on the bass, I'd essentially alternate between C Dorian and C Lydian harmonic environments. So it's kind of an interesting idea. So let's try it in a simple way first of all, with just me running up and down the scale but holding this bass note. So here's a low bass note of C. Here's my C Dorian, aka a B flat major scale. Now here's my C Lydian, aka a G major scale. So I just again move from C Dorian to C Lydian. Now, instead of just running up and down the scale, I'll improvise in a little more of a free-form way, but I'll try and verbally comment at the same time as I'm alternating between the modes. So here's some notes from C Dorian. Now it's from C Lydian. Back to C Dorian. It's back to C Lydian. Back to C Dorian. Back to C Lydian. C Dorian. You get the idea. So all I'm basically doing is, as I'm changing chords there, I'm essentially improvising within two different major scales, that is to say B flat major and G major, all over C, and the bass there creates those alternating harmonic environments of excuse me, C Dorian to C Lydian respectively. And I think you can hear some of the impressionistic qualities in there of some, more film-oriented or abstract music, or even some of the more impressionistic contemporary jazz styles that use those devices too. So anyway, I hope that was a useful insight into some of the harmonic consequences of modes. And for more information on modes in general, several books I have may be useful to you. In my Music Theory Level 1 book, I do set out the basic theory of modes and how we take major scales and displace them to create modes. Okay. Also in my Music Theory Level 3 book, where I break out all possible types of chords and their scale sources, I break down all the modal scale sources in there where applicable for different chords. In my ear training books in Level 2 right here, I have quite a few good ear training exercises on modes where you get to recognize the scale degrees in modes by ear, and you can also use that for sight singing practice. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little introduction to the harmonic use of modes, and have fun incorporating that into your playing and writing. By the way, for information on any of our books, check out our website at harrisonmusic.com. I also do offer online private lessons, and this is the view of me that you'll see during the lessons. So if you're interested in finding more information about that, of course, please check out the website as well. Thanks, and have fun with your modes. Bye for now.